Welcome to Sikhcast, brought to you by Sikh Research Institute, illuminating every path.
Introducing Paigham-i-Goya, Expression of Love, new translations of a selection of ghazals from Bhai Nand Lal Goya. Today's podcast begins with the recitation of Bhai Nand Lal's ghazal in Persian, followed by a new English transcreation, the result of a unique collaboration between Dr. Fatima Fayyaz and Dr. Nadhra Khan of Lahore University of Management Sciences, Damanpreet Singh, writer and graduate student, and Inni Kaur of SikhRI, followed by a discussion between Daman and Inni about the beauty of the ghazal and the transcreation process.
چون ماه 2 هفته رونمایی چه شود؟ امشب مه من اگر بیایی چه شود؟ این جمله جهان اسیر زلفت گشته، یک لحظه اگر گره گشایی چه شود؟ عالم همه گشته است بی تو تاریک، خورشید صفت اگر برآیی چه شود؟ یک لحظه بیا و در چشمم بنشین، در دیده نشسته دلربایی چه شود؟ این هندوی خالت که به رویت شیداست، بفروشی اگر به نقد خدایی چه شود؟ در دیده تویی و من به هر کو جویا، از پرده غیب رونمایی چه شود؟ گویاست به هر طرف سراغت جویا، گر گم شده راه راهنمایی چه شود؟
What would happen if you showed your face like the full moon? What would happen if you came tonight, my moon? The whole world is imprisoned by your tresses. What would happen if you untangled your tresses for a moment? There is darkness in the world without you. What would happen if you rose like the sun? Come for a moment and reside in my eyes forever. What would happen if you resided in my eyes and stole my heart? This mole which dotes on your countenance, what would, for God's sake, happen if you sold it for cash? You are in my eyes, and I search for you everywhere. What would happen if you lifted the secret veil? Goya searches for you everywhere. What would happen if you showed the right path to the lost?
Guru Fatehji, this is Inni Kaur in conversation with Damanpreet Singh on Ghazal number 25 from Bhai Nand Lal's collection, Divan-i-Goya. Welcome, Daman. I am so looking forward to continuing our conversation on these ghazals. And I know this one is very close to your heart because while working on it, I could sense in the comments which you had on it, I know this is going to be rather special. So welcome, Daman.
Yeah, I'm excited to continue talking with you.
So, Daman, and this one, the repeated word in this ghazal is what? Because I don't want to butcher the word. So tell me.
Yeah, so the repeated phrase in this ghazal is in the form of a question, Jeshavad, which we have translated largely as what would happen, implying mystery, implying the possibility of something to come that isn't quite known, implying a little bit of playfulness, as we'll see at some points. But overall, the literal meaning is what would happen.
I know the phrase is what would happen is usually asked in a rhetorical or hypothetical situation by someone who's weighing up the possibilities of such an action, like what would it be? Whereas, I was thinking that what if we use the phrase what will happen? And then I thought about will is really a statement saying something about a future happening.
Mm-hmm.
And here, so it doesn't have that mysterious element that you were talking about,
Mm-hmm.
right? Let's get to the first couplet, and I'm sure our listeners will be able to pick on what that repeated phrase, how it is being played, and particularly in the first couplet. What would happen if you showed your face like the full moon? What would happen if you came tonight, my moon? So, Daman, in Ghazal 8,
Mm-hmm.
we spoke at length about the symbolisms of those moon and the sun in Persian literature. And just recapping, I mean, the moon being the metaphor for something or actually someone so extraordinary. So I feel in the first line of this couplet, Goya is raising the physical attributes of love of Guru Gobind Singh Sahib to that of the full moon, not half a moon, because in Persian literature there's also half moon, but here this is a full moon.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the second line, what I found very interesting is that he addresses his beloved as my moon.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me, here was, the heart fluttering and all sorts of things happening. So just if I had to rephrase that sentence, it would be something like this. What would happen if you came to me tonight, my extraordinary being, the one who encompasses every thought, every idea, every longing, every passion of mine? So what would happen? And that's how I look at this, particularly the second line, being the first one where the full moon, the radiance of the moon, the one that this is the lover, not the lover from the moon is not cold in Persian poetry. The moon is also there's a spirituality in the moon, the enlightenment that comes from the moon, that is also being referred to here. What are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I should say when, since this is audio only, when Inni read the second line, both of us smiled so much, which is what would happen if you came tonight, my moon. I think exactly what you're saying is the power of this couplet. I will say, as we will see as we continue, this is a very intimate ghazal. At some level, it feels like, it can't be read out loud. It's very, very intimate. It's very, it's conveying, I think, an aspect of Nand Lal's relationship with the Guru that we haven't yet seen in the ghazals that we've done together in this podcast. And yeah, I think I would add, so the power of moving from the imagery of the full moon, which of course is something that is, month after month, we wait for the full moon. We just had a full moon this week. It's a special day. It's a bright day, right? We all feel the luminous quality of the moon when it's in its full state. So I think that is just a really powerful image. Of course, as you're saying, classically has been used to invoke one's beloved in Persian poetry and in other poetic traditions as well. And then the switch from the full moon, which everyone knows and everyone waits for and everyone loves, to my moon, which is very intimate, is a personal gesture that Nand Lal is now making to his beloved. And I think that switch is very powerful.
Yes. I mean, in some of my poetry, I have addressed it, you are my moon, to my moon. So that's why this was like, oh, I think I have a glimpse into what he's feeling. So let's move to the second couplet. The whole world is imprisoned by your tresses. What would happen if you untangled your tresses for a moment? The vivid imagery of the flowing tresses, what do you make of it? The intimacy. I mean, actually, when I'm reading it, I'm yearning to put my fingers on those tresses and just feel that softness and, untangle your tresses. I know we use the word tresses because hair is so, I think hair is a little colder than tresses.
Mm-hmm.
Your thoughts, Daman?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe I have two thoughts here. I think I would want to put on the table the question again, which we've discussed in the past, which is the metaphorical and the literal. So, as you know, for listeners who might not have listened to the first podcast, for example, right? Bhai Nand Lal is writing in the court of Guru Gobind Singh. He is largely writing poetry in Persian. Those two things are important because he is, as we've already seen with the moon imagery, adopting and appropriating imagery that is used often and is part of the grammar of Persian poetry, including the moon, but also including the personification of the divine, which happens all the time in Sufi poetry, right? So is he? So I think the play that we see in all of the ghazals to some extent, and I think is really in high relief here, in a way that we haven't quite seen in the ones we've talked about together, is he talking about Guru Gobind Singh's physical hair? Or is he talking about the beloved as metaphor and using the Sufi, the powerful Sufi trope of talking about the divine as if they were a physical presence? I think, we've talked about, I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Inni, because we've talked about this in the past as we were doing the translations together. I think one can, I think it could be both. So I think that would be something that I'm a little curious about.
Yeah, and that what I looked at that and I'm saying, ooh, is he using the physical presence of the guru to talk about something larger and a play as well? And I've done something similar, and I'm saying I'm by no means I'm by Nand Lal's standard by that, but it is a play is when you want to talk about the one you love at a much vaster place. And so, what are the things that you use? And the first, it was, the moon, the face. So now from the face, we've gone to the hair, the physical attributes. What I found was what very interesting was imprisoned by your tresses. So there's beauty, but and then the second one was untangled. So there's a play over there in these two words as well, I see. The imprisonment and the entanglement as well is very much there. I personally, for me, I think it is both. However, one feels comfortable in their own journey to take a look at it in that light. Because if someone did not know Bhai Nand Lal's relationship to the Guru, these would be read in a very different light. So that openness, I mean, it's an incredible technique to be able to use it in that format and present it in that format, where that even when we translate it today and we hear it in Persian today, the power is the same, the message is the same. So, and it conveying the same thing because, love never changes. And these are the intimacies of love. What was we could say, in the 18th century, the way people wrote about love and what people are writing about love. And there is no difference. It's the same thing. I mean, because there are these words are the words which I have used. So that to me is that beauty of love being eternal. Love, it's that feeling that action oriented where the lover for the beloved, we all have our journeys, how close we get to the beloved and all that what it takes, or what we feel, and we like to record it. I think poets more like to record when there's a certain dimension in your relationship changes. Then there is that element. Oh, I didn't know, I didn't feel this a year ago, or I didn't feel this 6 months ago, but I'm feeling it now.
Mm-hmm.
So at least for me, it's very important to record that.
Yeah.
I know we've transgressed, but so the whole world is imprisoned by your tresses. What would happen if you untangled your tresses for a moment? Daman?
I think that I would want to add one or two more things, maybe 1.5 things, but there is, I think, so there's two things that I think are kind of interesting. The whole world, which is a literal translation, or so we could actually even say this whole world, which maybe is even more powerful. But the whole world, or this whole world, is imprisoned by your tresses. Again, we have this play of there's a universality here, but then there's also, is he using this whole world to talk about his own world, as we do, as like melodramatic poets still do, right? So is that it? Or is he actually telling us something about the relationship of the Guru to this world, this realm? Both, I think probably both. And then again, what would happen if you untangled your tresses for a moment? Throughout the ghazals that we've looked at, there has been this one of the powerful things, I think, that we see throughout his ghazals is that there's this emphasis on the fleeting, right? There's this emphasis on, I just want one glimpse and that would be enough. What if you just did this for one moment? What would that look like? What would that do? There is this sense of restraint and longing that I think we've been seeing throughout, that I think this second line of this couplet really encapsulates.
So we move to the third couplet. There is darkness in the world without you. What would happen if you rose like the sun? Wow. So in Persian literature, the sun is idealized as that life-giving force. That's that universal cosmic power, the symbol for that. And it's associated with the god of light, Mitra, right? So, what would happen if there is darkness in the world without you? And when I was reading that, one of the Bhatts in their Sabayas wrote, Gur bin ghor andhar, that without Guru, there is utter darkness. And I mean, that came really, it just said, this is what, I associated it with that. So I don't know, but there is darkness in the world without you. What would happen if you rose like the sun? What would happen? The life-giving force to everything that, what would happen, Daman?
So what's interesting here for me, so I think, right, so the move from the moon to the sun. And now we're in this couplet, and again, thinking a little bit about the ghazal form, where each couplet really is a complete thought unto itself. So here we've now moved securely into the realm of the world, right? So we've moved away from the very, very kind of evocative intimacy of the previous couplets, and now it is, and that's a literal translation in terms of the tense of this first line, which is the simple present. It's the definitive statement. There is darkness, right? So whereas we have in the repeating line, what would happen, there is this sense of mystery, the sense of possibility. That is, I think, an important contrast to the simple present declarative nature of the first line of this couplet, where it is that there actually is dark. That is the state of the world. It is dark without you. And what would happen if you rose like the sun, which of course, sets, etc. So I think here we have a sense of something fleeting, a sense of something that, one wants to simply get a glimpse of or simply experience briefly.
So now we move to the fourth couplet, Daman. Come for a moment and reside in my eyes forever. What would happen if you resided in my eyes and stole my heart. So, there is in here, before I go, I don't want to talk too much about this one because I really want you to focus on the Persian words on this one because they are so exquisite and I know our listeners would enjoy that.
Yeah, I think so. There's two words that are somewhat interesting here. So the first I'll say is Benashin and Nisheste. So what we've translated as reside can also mean to sit, to kind of. We really, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, both wanted to. So the question here for us was how do we convey the sense of there is a desire for intimacy, right? There's a desire for the beloved to come into one's heart. But it's not simply come, it's not simply, be in my heart, but it's actually like settle down in my heart and reside in it, right? So there is I think that word is, those meanings are conveyed in the original Persian, and that was something that we wanted to try to get in our translation. So we settled with reside precisely for this reason, because it suggests, something somewhat more permanent, but also something that, suggests a comfort, suggests an intimacy. So that's an interesting word here. And then, of course, the other one is Dilrubai, which is, one who snatches a heart. This one who snatches one's heart, or that would be the literal translation. And it's a word that I think is somewhat playful, because if we think about this couplet closely, he's asking the beloved, asking the Guru to come and reside in his eyes, which is that which allows him to see this moon, angel-faced beloved, that which allows him to see the tresses that have imprisoned him, or imprisoned the world, rather. And then he's also, asking him to steal his heart. So, I've always been kind of curious, what is this connection between the eye and the heart? Because we've seen in previous ghazals we've looked at, he's drawn a distinction between, the seminary and the winehouse, the mind and the heart. And here we have the eye and the heart as somewhat kind of intimate companions in allowing him to gain a glimpse of the Guru. So I thought that was kind of interesting here.
So when you reside in someone's eyes, you see them everywhere. That's the way I look at it. If you stole my heart, means you are resounding within me. So I'm seeing you everywhere, and within me I am feeling you or hearing you. It's that beat in my heart is that beat. If you stole my heart, so means my heart, that every pulse is beating for you. And wherever I'm seeing you. So it's that completion of what the lover says, in poetry is wherever, and even Guru, tu hi, wherever I see you, and you. So that's that, when you were asking, what does that mean? That was coming to me. Wherever I see you and only you. This particular couplet also reminds me of Amir Khusro's ghazals. And this particular one, O Khusro, the river of love, runs in strange directions. One who jumps into it drowns, and one who drowns gets across. So that heart and that eyes, it is, that completion which Khusro was talking about, is that completion which I saw in this particular ghazal, that you want that beloved to reside in your eyes and see, I'm just going to say him, see him everywhere, feel him everywhere, the heart beats for him, whatever you hear resounding within. So that's what it is for me. So should we move on to the next couplet?
Yes.
Okay, so that is couplet number 5. which you are going to have to unpack this one for all of us, because there is way too much. And I totally don't get it until you had explained it. And Nadhra and Fatima had done quite a good job explaining that as well. So the fifth couplet is, the mole which dotes on your countenance, what would, for God's sake, happen if you sold it for cash? So, Daman, first, the mole which dotes on your countenance. Speak to us about that one first.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is that we're once again in this couplet back to the physical attributes of the beloved, and now we're back to the face and the beauty, the mole, which has enchanted poets to this day. We see that imagery, and what is the decision we made in our translation here is to take out what the word that qualifies the mole in the original, which is Hindu, which suggests a couple of different things, and is one of those things again that would have been probably quite readily apparent to readers of Bhai Nand Lal's poetry during his time, his contemporaries. But so Hindu here suggests darkness and color. So he's describing a dark mole by using the word Hindu, because the word Hindu means and suggests in Persian both one who is from the region now that we now refer to as the Indian subcontinent, that would have been referred to as Hind in Persian and still is. So it's not suggestive of what we understand as Hinduism today, but actually the region of the Indian subcontinent. And is suggestive of a dark color because of the relative darkness of complexion of those from the Indian subcontinent who were enslaved at some point by the Persians. So there was a slave trade between the subcontinent and Persia, the Persian Empire. No one should quote me on all of that is true, but don't ask me for more historical detail at this point. But he is suggesting that's the reason why Hindu suggests darkness, and that's the reason why we use in Persian it's the word Hindu to suggest someone from the Indian subcontinent. So it's a dark mole. We could have perhaps said this dark mole. We decided for the sake of the reader's comprehension to just say this mole, because that already suggests a very powerful image, which dotes on your countenance. And then the second line, I actually would be I'm not sure I understand what would, for God's sake, happen if you sold it for cash. The one thing I would say before I would be curious to hear your thoughts, Inni, is that we have notably used the word God in this line, which we often don't do. The reason we use the word God here is because in the original he is using the word Khuda. And just as a general practice in our translations, when Nand Lal has referred to the divine, we've tried to translate it as literally as possible, right? So when the divine comes as the beloved, we see the divine as the beloved. When the divine is described using different attributes, we translate that attribute. And here he's literally saying Khuda. So we've used the word God. But I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this couplet and this second line in particular.
I think there was one of my verses I wrote that all I long for is to be a mole on your face.
Mm-hmm.
And then it is because the mole is with you always. And and I've said, fortunate is the mole, for it gets to feel your warmth. Fortunate is the mole, for it gets to for the mist of the eyes, for the mist of the eyes falls on it, there's something which I've written about the mole. So for me, the mole is very symbolic, that you want to be that tiny, tiny piece, the speck on the beloved's cheek, right? And the value of that is, for a lover, is enormous. It really is enormous. To want to actually, your ego, there is nothing of that ego. It is that you're willing to be that mole. You want to be that tiny speck, nothing else, not on your beloved's cheek. And what would, for God's sake, I think for us, I looked at it, for God's sake, because that's our parlance even now that we use. And I thought it was a lot more impactful in sort of, because maybe a reader would not understand what Khada was, even if we had translated it as God. So I thought that was good that we did, for God's sake. What would happen if you sold it for cash? I mean, I looked at it, what would happen if my beloved sold that mole, me, for cash? Because in the first line, I'm saying, the mole which dotes on your countenance, that I'm actually associating myself with that mole. And I've zeroed in. I've said, I want, that little tiny speck, I want to be a part of that. And that is precious to me. But if you sold that, what would it do to me? But it is, this probably for me is the most intimate line. And maybe it could be because I've written so much on the mole, myself, not knowing Bhai Nand Lal had written that. But I never associated with the darkness. I just associated the mole as being close to on my beloved's cheek, and very envious of the mole.
Yeah.
It was more that you're there all the time and I'm so far away. And what would I do? Can I not be that mole?
Yeah. So yeah, I think right. So that's a way I haven't really thought of this couplet. Right. So I think the Hindu the in at one point we played with saying this Indian slave like mole. It doesn't work because no one. That's not something that no one. Well, not no one, but most people, including me. I'm talking about myself really here. If I were to read that phrase, that would mean nothing to me. It would just raise lots of questions more than anything else. But I think it is. I think maybe just a physical description of, more than anything else, it's just a physical description of the mole, and its dark color. But I'm kind of curious in the second line of this couplet. The "for God's sake," I'm kind of reading it now as also somewhat exasperated but playful, maybe, is how I'm reading it. Like both exasperated and like kind of playful. Because if, I don't know if I have a complete thought about this, but there is a way in which, he's referring to the guru and say, what does it mean for the guru to sell something for God's sake? I mean, that's like a nonsensical statement, right? So I'm kind of curious, I don't know if I'm just overthinking it at this point, but I'm kind of into that interpretation of it also.
Right. And I also, when I was reading it, I'm saying, did the guru have a mole on his face?
Yeah, right.
Right. That first, because we are so wanting to know what the guru looked like. Is this a tiny glimpse? Did he just say that? Did he see that? And then he's writing that? I don't know. I mean, that to me came, did Guru have a mole? I wonder, and the mind does wanders in many different directions and how you take it. Yeah, this one was, I think, for me, because of the mole, this was a very special couplet. So we move to the sixth one, Daman. You are in my eyes, and I search for you everywhere. What would happen if you lifted the secret veil? that secret veil. We've talked in spirituality and it's between the lover and the beloved. What if you lifted that? That's that symbolism between the spirit and matter. When that veil is lifted, it's the veil of separation, that I'm separate from you. It's that veil of duality that prevents us from seeing and believing and feeling all is one. It's only when that veil is lifted, I feel, that we can experience a timelessness, limitlessness state of existence.
Mm-hmm.
But you're in my eyes, and I search for you everywhere. There's an acknowledgement somewhere there. And what would happen if you lifted the secret veil?
Mm-hmm. It seems to me that this couplet is thinking about also kind of the so there's a contradiction that we've seen throughout Bhai Nand Lal's work, which is that which the knowledge, which is, I don't think that's the right word, or the intuitive knowledge, let's say, that the divine or the beloved is everywhere, but then also this like inability to always feel that, or this like deep longing to glimpse it for a moment, right? This brief glimpse and then like a longing that follows that. Doubt and pain, right? There's different ways to narrate this contradiction, but also, this is maybe the contradiction. We see this everywhere in Gurbani also. And then in previous ghazals, we've seen it as the seminary and the wine house, right? Where does one go to look for the connection? And ultimately, then another line that he has at some point is, that is something about his heart. I'm not going to remember exactly how we translated it, but something to the effect of the heart being the keeper of divine secrets. And, it's about coming into the heart rather than going, looking for the external, reading the books or whatever. Which is not to be anti-intellectual or whatever. No, that's not.
Heaven forbid we do that.
That's not what I mean. But so that I think is again, right? You're in my eyes, and again here the tense is maybe important because it is the simple present. It is a statement. You are in my eyes. There isn't the sense of doubt, or isn't the sense of is this true. But it is that you're in my eyes, but I search for you everywhere. Both of those things are in the simple present tense, and they are both happening at the same time. And then, of course, we have the conditional question: what would happen if you lifted the veil, the secret veil? Yeah.
So there is that searching for the beloved who is already within, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something to that nature. Because the veil is within you are in my eyes, I search for you everywhere. What would happen if you lifted the secret veil? So should we move to the last one?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the 7th couplet, the last one. Goya searches for you everywhere. What would happen if you showed the right path to the lost? So amazingly beautiful, Daman. We spent quite a bit of time on this particular couplet because of the play of his name, the way it's pronounced. So I'm going to leave that to you, Daman, to just share this with us.
Yeah. So Goya, of course, is Nand Lal's pen name, but in Persian means one who speaks, or one who utters something. But let's say one who speaks. And part of the play, and this is something that we could actually do in every ghazal, because again, if you're a Persian speaker, you know that Goya is both his name but also means one who speaks. So if we were to go back and translate the last couplets where the pen name shows up, there are times when translating Goya in its literal might even change the meaning of the couplet. And that's something, again, that just gets lost in translation, that in the English, it's not possible to have that play and that very subtle play that is just readily apparent to the Persian listener or the Persian speaking listener or reader. But Goya, one who speaks, searches for you everywhere. The play in the original Persian is that Juya, which is suggesting the searching, rhymes with Goya. So it's the one who speaks, it's the one who searches, or something like that, right? So there's a kind of parallel form that we were really unable to convey in the English, while also wanting to remain faithful to the ghazal form where the pen name shows up in the last line, in the last couplet. So we settled on going with just the pen name. But in the Persian, I think it's, again, I think points to the richness of the original, in addition to like the difficulties of translation and the compromises that have to be made when one translates. But we couldn't quite get to a point where we could convey both things in the English, so we had to choose one.
So Goya searches for you everywhere, or the one who searches for you everywhere. How would we put it if we went literal? That line.
Maybe we would say, and this is, I don't know, I'm thinking out loud, but maybe we would say, the one who speaks is the one who searches for you everywhere, or the one who speaks. Yeah, I think it would be something like either the one who speaks searches for you everywhere, or the one who speaks is the one who searches for you everywhere. Or yeah, I would be curious also to hear kind of what Nadhra and Fatima would say to for this line. But that's, I think, something to that effect might work. And we played with like adding, at one point I think we had one who speaks, parentheses, Goya, the poet, searches for you everywhere, I think is how we had thought about doing it. But that, that doesn't convey the like the subtlety of the rhyming language in the original, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I love that. What would happen if you showed the right path to the lost? He ends with that. So in Daman, in this entire ghazal, I felt, a deep longing, a yearning, and an intimacy. I mean, it's very, but also that Goya is quite comfortable in his relationship. Because only if one is comfortable in one's relationship, or one feels, there's always a feeling of the lover that that the lover has a haqq over the beloved, because the love, it's not it's the love that has the haqq, that thing. It's never the individual. It's because I love you so much, I have the right to even ask you this, that what would happen, to that. And I think that playfulness and that relationship and that level of intimacy can only come when there is his complete surrender to his love.
Right.
Because otherwise you wouldn't ask that. It's only when you're very secure in your love. It really doesn't matter whether it's reciprocated or not. That's never, for the lover, that's never the thing. It is because the entire journey is about your love. It's what you are feeling. I mean, reciprocating, that's an added thing. But the lover never lets, or at least I don't allows anyone to judge their love or say anything to their love, because that's paramount for them, because that's that transformation which they go through. And, so for me, when I was reading this was like, wow, Goya is really, it is, I'm reminded of Puran Singh's, I think I said it in one of the ghazals, that he came to the Guru's court and like a bee, he just stayed because the honey was there, or the moth or something it was. And that's what Puran Singh was trying to say, was that once he came, the nectar was so sweet that he just stayed. There was no going back to anything.
Yeah.
And I felt very much that coming through in this ghazal.
I have two thoughts, I think, in reaction. So the first, I think, is so it seems to me that this ghazal can be read as, you use the word surrender, right? So in some ways, this ghazal and the what you describe as a security or a sense of comfort or a sense of being comfortable in one's relationship to the beloved. It seems to me that this might be a powerful explanation of what Nand Lal might mean by bandagi, right?
Mm-hmm.
Idea of reverence bondage.
Mm-hmm.
Which, as we, if listeners listen to the first ghazal, it's not necessary to, but there's in the very first couplet of the very first ghazal that he writes, he talks about coming into existence and being in the state of reverence bondage as a coming into existence. And, of course, we struggled with how to translate bandagi, which the most literal translation might be slavery, but that doesn't convey. And, we really struggled with conveying what exactly does it mean, because in our contemporary understanding, slavery is suggestive of being owned by someone as property, as it's a labor relation, it's a property relation, and that of course is not what he means. So that translation doesn't work. So we settled on reverence bondage, which maybe that's closer, maybe it's not. People can let us know what they think. But there is, I think, the contradiction, or the main, or what constitutes the state of reverence bondage or bandagi is this longing, deep love or reverence, but also this sense of intimacy and security, right? There's clearly a power that's derived from reverence bondage. It's not simply a state of submission. It's something more complicated than that. So it seems to me that this ghazal in its intimacy, and as I said in the beginning, it almost feels like you can't read it out loud. I think part of it is because of this, right? It's playful, and parts of it are seem like secrets, notes that one would pass to someone that it is entirely meant for the receiver of the note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you're getting a glimpse, it's like you are actually peeking into a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and it feels, ooh, do I want to go there? This is, and so you treat it, we've treated it with great reverence.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't been flippant about it at all. We've been very careful with each word, and there was a great sense amongst the four of us that there were many moments of wow, and the beauty of the language and that thought was so powerful. Never for any moment did we think of it any other way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the second thought that is really also a half or quarter formed thought or whatever, is the question of reciprocity. I'm kind of curious about this question, because often we'll think about having been graced as one isn't in a state of bandagi because you get rewards or because, if you check off the list, you'll get a reward and you'll feel a connection and you've done it and you've succeeded. It's something else.
Right.
And, where does it come from and what does it lead to, I guess, are like some of the questions that one could ask. So, yeah, this is a very, it's not a coherent thought, but, again, thinking about the way in which in this ghazal, you're in my eyes and I search for you everywhere. There's this desire for a glimpse, and that's all. That if there is any reciprocity desired, it's this fleeting, brief. It would be really nice if I got it, but it's okay if I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the state of a lover. The submission is completely there, is there, and it is like it's the love that transforms you. And you're so grateful that this love has entered you because it's allowed you to experience something you would have never experienced, and has made you vast and has changed you. So it is like Inni bakshish hui hai. I'm so grateful for what I am experiencing that to even ask you for something more feels like नाजायज फायदा उठा रहे हैं. Like I'm taking liberties because I've already received so much. Because it's that love within me that has poured out for you, that is there. Because if the beloved wasn't there, this love would have not happened. So you're just grateful that you are able to feel this for the beloved, for the individual, and your love has made you grow. And isn't that what love is supposed to do? Is actually, that is love. When love transforms you and makes you vast and enables you to experience something you would not have experienced on your own, that is a relationship. And that's the power of love. And, yes, can it be experienced in a human level? Many times, at many instances, there is. But it's that continuously feeling that's where we struggle with. But definitely there are moments where that love is so powerful that I would have never experienced this without you. And to acknowledge it. And here, Bhai Nand Lal, I feel, is also acknowledging that love, and recognizing the power of love. So that brings us to the end of a beautiful 45 minutes of talking about someone we both love and revere. And what a beautiful way to spend an afternoon.
Yeah. And hopefully I'm, excited as always to hear comments and feedback from listeners and questions and, other things that was bad. Take that out. Yeah, I'm excited to, as always, also hear feedback and comments from our listeners. It's been really great to know that this is resonating with people, and that people are joining us on this journey.
Right. You can leave a comment on Twitter or on Facebook, but you can also send us an email at info@sikhri.org, and we'll get the email. So if you choose to do the email route, info@sikhri, SIKHRI.org. So thank you, Daman, for another really delightful conversation. And until next time, we wish our listeners, should we say Khuda Hafiz? Should we say Guru Fateh? Should we say see you later? What do we say, Thank you, Daman. And thank you to our listeners. Guru Fateh.
You are listening to Sikhcast by Sikh Research Institute, illuminating every path.